Have you ever met someone who always puts others first so much that they sometimes forget to take care of themselves?
おはよう。早いね。
おはよう。コーヒー入れよっか。
ありがとう。
Kana was that kind of person. She lived her life quietly, devoted to her small family, believing that love and patience could hold everything together.
なんかメール載ってたみたいよ。
仕事の。
ずいぶん朝早いのね。
そう。来月結構長い出張入ってさ、福岡。
どれぐらい
？2週間。
結構長いわね。一人で行くの？
長尾連れてく。結構使えるやつでさ。
To anyone looking in, her life might have seemed perfectly calm. But behind that calm exterior, Kana carried the same dreams, insecurities, and hopes that live in every human heart. Yet life, as it often does, had a way of testing her strength in the most unexpected ways. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just a realization that something in her marriage had changed. The warmth she once felt had turned into distance, and that distance whispered a truth she had been avoiding. Most people, when facing emotional pain, react instinctively with anger, sadness, or blame. But Kana did something remarkable. It wasn't that she didn't feel hurt, she did, deeply, but she wanted to understand why before she decided how to respond. Every relationship, no matter how strong, faces seasons of change. Kana knew she couldn't control what others did, but she could control how she grew from it. So instead of closing her heart, she chose to open it to understanding, to patience, to healing. It wasn't an easy choice. But Kana understood that peace isn't found in running away from pain. It's found in walking through it with grace. In the following days, she focused on small things that grounded her. She went for morning walks and watched the sunrise, feeling the light on her skin. She wrote her thoughts in a journal. Through this quiet process, Kana began to rediscover herself, not as someone's wife, but as a complete person. She realized that for years, she had been giving love without leaving enough space to nurture her own heart. Now, she wanted to rebuild that balance to love fully, but also wisely. Kana's story begins not with despair, but with a moment of awakening, a moment that teaches us that even in our most fragile times, we hold the power to choose peace over bitterness. Because in the end, every human journey is about learning to heal while still believing in goodness. Kana didn't know what the future would bring, but she was ready to walk forward with gentleness, integrity, and hope. And that's where her true transformation began.
なんかメールだといっぱい話してたけど、こうやって会って話すと変な感じするね。
そうですね。
As days passed, Kana decided she needed a way to bring light back into her daily life. One day, she opened her phone and began exploring social media. In that new digital space, she met someone named Aki, a friendly voice who often commented thoughtfully on her posts. Their first exchanges were simple, sharing thoughts about books, travel, or the small joys of everyday life. What made those conversations special wasn't excitement in the romantic sense, but recognition, the feeling of being understood without having to explain too much. Aki listened without judgment, and that made Kana feel safe to express the emotions she had kept locked inside. They laughed about simple things, exchanged stories about childhood memories, and talked about the small ways people find happiness even after disappointment. Through these conversations, Kana began to rediscover the joy of human connection. It wasn't about replacing anyone or anything. It was about remembering that the world is still full of good people and that empathy can come from unexpected places. For the first time in a long while, she felt her heart lighten. She noticed herself smiling again while reading messages, enjoying her morning tea, or watching the sunlight filter through the curtains. Those were signs that her spirit was healing. But what truly made this stage of her journey meaningful was what she learned about herself. She realized she didn't need validation from anyone to feel complete. What she truly needed was space to breathe, to grow, and to see the world beyond the pain that once confined her. Still, Kana was aware of her emotions. She could sense that part of her heart, though calmer, was still fragile. So she moved carefully, appreciating the friendship, but always reminding herself of her values, her commitments, and the love she had built over the years. Every time she reflected on her family, she thought of how relationships, like gardens, need care, patience, and sometimes time apart to bloom again. She wondered if she could bring that same kindness back home, to rebuild not just the relationship, but the trust and understanding that had been missing. And in those thoughts, a quiet determination began to form. Kana didn't see herself as a victim anymore. She saw herself as someone capable of change, someone who could turn pain into perspective. As she looked at her reflection in the mirror, she noticed something new in her eyes, a spark of calm confidence. It wasn't arrogance or pride. It was a soft kind of strength that said, "I'm learning to love myself, and that's okay." This was a turning point, the moment when her story shifted from endurance to transformation. The sadness that once weighed her down was slowly turning into wisdom. She was learning to smile, not because everything was perfect, but because she had learned how to live peacefully with imperfection. Kana doesn't know where her life story will lead, but she knows one thing for sure. Life always rewards those who are kind, even when it hurts. And in that realization, she found something far more exciting than anything she had expected. She found herself. Kana found herself standing between two versions of her life, the one she had built with years of devotion, and the new world of calm and understanding she had discovered through self-reflection and human connection.
俺が会いたかったんで、
ありがと
また会ってくれますか？
う。もちろん。
じゃあまたゆっくり。ありがとうございました。
じゃあまた。
At times, that balance felt fragile. There were evenings when memories of her husband's distance returned like faint echoes, testing her heart's stability. It wasn't anger that haunted her, but uncertainty. She wondered if the bond between them could truly heal, if time could bring back the tenderness that once made her feel safe. The world outside looked quiet, but inside, her thoughts swirled like a storm. She thought of her family, the shared meals, the laughter, the small promises whispered over the years. Love, she realized, was never about perfection. It was about endurance. But endurance without warmth could slowly turn into silence. She didn't want silence. She wanted understanding. She knew that true healing would require courage. The courage to speak, to forgive, and to let go of unspoken resentment. She didn't want to run away or escape the pain. She wanted to transform it into something meaningful. Sometimes she thought of her conversations with Aki, the friend who had unknowingly become a mirror to her soul. The kindness he showed reminded her of what empathy looked like, something she wanted to bring back into her home. She realized that people often lose their way, not because they stop loving, but because they forget how to listen. Misunderstandings grow when silence takes the place of honesty. Kana decided she would no longer let silence guide her path. She began to speak more openly, not with accusations, but with sincerity. Instead of saying, "You hurt me," she found herself saying, "I want us to understand each other again." Her tone was not heavy but gentle, as if offering a hand across a quiet distance. Her husband, though surprised, listened. For the first time in a long while, they shared a conversation that wasn't about blame, but about rebuilding. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't instant, but it was a beginning rooted in calm rather than confrontation. In the days that followed, small things began to change. The silence grew softer. They started sharing small details of their day again, laughing at things they hadn't noticed before. The tension that once filled the room slowly began to fade. Kana didn't fool herself into believing that everything was fixed, but she understood something deeper. Love is not a straight road. It bends, it falters, and sometimes it breaks. But when people choose patience and empathy, the broken pieces can become stronger than before. Her journey was not about finding someone to make her happy, but about becoming whole enough to share happiness freely. Her days slowly returned to rhythm. Morning light streaming through the window no longer reminded her of loss, but of renewal. She found joy in small things again. Her husband, too, seemed to sense the change. They started talking again about plans, family, and even silly everyday things. It wasn't about returning to how things used to be. It was about creating something better, a bond with more honesty, empathy, and mutual respect. Kana learned that forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone else. It's a gift you give yourself. Holding on to bitterness only keeps you trapped in the past, but letting go allows your heart to breathe again. Love is not about avoiding pain, but about learning how to grow from it. The greatest strength lies not in controlling others, but in controlling ourselves, our emotions, our reactions, our choices. We can choose to be gentle without being weak, forgiving without being naive, and hopeful without denying reality. She now lived with a lighter heart. Kana's journey wasn't about losing or finding love. It was about rediscovering her inner strength. She walked through pain, not around it. She faced it, learned from it, and came out softer, not harder. And in that softness, she found the truest form of courage. That healing doesn't happen overnight, but every step toward peace is worth taking. When we learn to forgive, to listen, and to love ourselves with kindness, life begins to open new doors. Happiness isn't the absence of pain. It's the ability to see light even after the storm has passed.
じゃあね。
Months had passed since Kana first began her journey of rediscovery, and now her life had settled into a calm rhythm once more. But beneath that calm was something deeper, a quiet wisdom that could only come from walking through pain with grace. Every ending can become a beginning if we meet it with patience, understanding, and love. True strength isn't found in perfection, but in persistence, the will to keep believing in kindness, no matter what life brings. Because forgiveness doesn't just heal others, it frees your own heart.